starting to see on the right-hand side. So I guess we're live. So hello to 3 people so far, and 4. Hi, Michael Bailey.
Yes. 12. Okay, 6. No, 12 seconds, not 12 people.
Michael Bailey from Northwestern University. I think that's Michael Bailey. Hello.
I think it probably is. I think there can only be one Michael Bailey. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll give people just another moment to filter in.
We'll talk about fashion just to fam.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing, there's a person in the back. You might see a cat in the background of mine. I'm wearing this hoodie to honor the Pacific Northwest lesbian style, only with the gay flair because it's cashmere. So.
Same. I'm also wearing the hoodie to honor the Pacific Northwest.
I was gonna wear the hat, but just in my hair. So.
I like your background there. This is my favorite part of doing Zooms is that I get to peer into people's houses, and it drives me crazy when they blur it. Yeah, give us a show.
I made these bookshelves here.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to be like a sun, the rays of the sun, but then you can't have bookshelves too close to the ceiling, so I couldn't do the top row. But it looks like those little pins they used to give you on the airplane when you were a kid, the little wings.
The
wings.
I like it. I like that couch
happy
too.
Colors. Yeah. So,
yeah. Is that couch? Is that is that cashmere? It looks like cashmere.
It's velour. It's turquoise velour. I call it, so like you go to a home furnishing store these days, everything is white. I call it the war on color. So my goal is to do the opposite, essentially. I look like Will Stansel.
All right, can you guys hear us? Are we breaking up at all? Can you guys hear us? No? Okay. All right. I'm getting a little bit of a lag, I believe.
I don't feel
Ben, are you hearing me?
I am. You just froze a little. Now you're actually frozen. Oh dear.
Can you hear me, Ben?
Now I can hear you. Your video is frozen.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting. Okay, shit. You can. Okay. What about people in the comments? Is my video frozen?
They seem to think it's good, so I figure we should start.
You're fine. Okay, let's go ahead. All right. Apologies if the video is frozen. You probably don't want to see my face anyway. Okay, so most of you are. Thank you everybody for being here. Most of you are probably familiar with you, Ben Ryan. Ben, thank you for being here as well. You recently covered a malpractice trial that took place in White Plains, New York. We will get to that shortly. But first off, I'm just curious, because I don't know the answer to this. How did you get in on this beat? It was, you sort of appeared one day.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
A lot of it was because of Jesse, because he was my editor a couple times at New York Magazine in like 2015. So I knew him from that. He's extremely thorough. And then, he came out with a piece in 2018 in The Atlantic, and everyone decided that he was a raging pervert and a Nazi and all these things that to be true. Kidding. But, I tried to sort of not just take everything at face value, but also, remain open-minded. You never know, and looked into these things and decided that they were all lying. And so that tells you something when everyone's screaming at you not to look at the man behind the curtain. And you really there's something there. And there was this key moment where I had reported intensely about the monkeypox epidemic that summer 2022. Well, I also had cancer, so it was like quite the event.
Yeah.
And I had testicular cancer. And I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. I only look back later like, oh, there's like a connection between me having this surgery and just the types of surgery that you have in transgender care. There's sort of an overlap. And in fact, after I had my surgery, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep that night from a headache from the anesthesia. And it was the cover article of New York Magazine of how I got my penis.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
It was about this phalloplasty. And I wasn't even making the connection then. But in any case, the end of 2022, that's when all the backlash was really happening to the New York Times' coverage about the puberty blockers article that Megan Twohey did. And I'm like, well, this reaction seems disproportionate to this very reasonable science article about some reasonable concerns. And then I tweeted. And I tweeted about one of the articles in Reuters. They did that series that fall as well in 2022. And it was about how few people are researching detransitioning. And Ross McKinnon in particular is one of the only people who does it. He's a trans man at York University in Canada. And I just tweeted very innocuously, gee, it's a shame that people wouldn't study this subject. They really should look into this more. That would be important. Alejandro Caraballo, the clinical instructor at the Harvard Law School and trans activist, saw this and just went bananas and just savaged me and started making up all the stuff that I had said. And my attitude towards that, most people would be like, I'm not going to say anything else. I don't need this. But I'm like, you're not going to bully me. And again, people, I posted about this the other day. They're like, oh, okay, so this is all just a grudge match. I'm like, no, partly it's just me saying I won't be pushed around, but also that level of aggression and the sort of illiberal attack on journalists and academics' normal exploration of truth, that's something I want to push up against. And that tells me that you don't have any other good cards if you have to be that totalitarian about it.
Yeah. Well, Jesse Singal just joined. Should we kick him out?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, glad to have you on this beat. You've done some great
Thanks.
work here. Okay. So before we get to the trial, there's been a lot of policy changes and executive orders and state level bills passed since or implemented since Donald Trump took office. So can you tell us just kind of broadly, what is the status of youth gender medicine at this point?
Yeah. So it is.
Oh, shit.
Oh, sorry. We're back. Thing. We're back. Okay. So Donald Trump, too, comes along very first day. He issues an executive order, says there are only 2 genders. He says that in his inauguration speech and just went bananas from there on out. So many different things that he's done trying to shove transgender females, biological males who identify and present as male, out of women's sports. And he's really ratcheted up the threat. Now it's an official HHS policy that hospitals that provide gender transition surgeries or treatments to people under age 19, and God knows why they picked 19 as opposed to 18, but they did, that they're going to forbid them from receiving Medicaid payments. And so that is just a death knell to any hospital. So it started with Children's Hospital Los Angeles I think it was in June, they announced that they were going to close their pediatric gender clinic in July, which they did. So that was run by Joanna Olson Kennedy, the leading pediatric gender provider. And the dominoes have just kept falling across the blue states since then. So Stat News just put out a list at Children's Minnesota, University of Utah, Multicare Marybridge in Washington, Rady Children's in California. That one's interesting because the Attorney General of California has since sued Rady's for, I guess it's under anti-discrimination statute, for closing their clinic. And that's something that Letitia James, the Attorney General in Washington, has also threatened when the clinic started to at least pause their treatments in the beginning of the Trump administration. And so they're being pushed from both sides, these clinics, where on one hand, like, well, we're going to shut down. Children's Hospital Los Angeles said in their internal memo about why they were closing the gender clinic was because we only have so many cash reserves. Even if they went through some big legal process and they got the money in the end, they wouldn't be able to survive it financially. That would just jeopardize the care for everybody. Right. So also the Trump administration has threatened the FBI on care providers, which is strange because the FBI sent out this tweet asking for people to snitch on anyone who's doing this, but what they were describing was legal in many states anyway. So exactly how are you going to charge them? But there was all this motion in the summer about how the DOJ was going to use female genital mutilation statutes to go after these guys. I don't know, but also the FTC is laying the groundwork to go after people for fraud. And one of the ways it seems that they would like to do so is there's a lot of times where care providers will use different diagnosis or billing codes rather than gender dysphoria or gender incongruence, which is the ICD-11 code. They'll use endocrine disorder not otherwise specified. So you see Abbott, the Attorney General in Texas, has targeted one care provider there for using that code after these practices had been banned. So she had to flee the state. She moved to Oregon and had to relinquish her license in Texas because of that. So we'll see about the FTC. So Glenna Goldis, she is a really outspoken lesbian activist, very, very gender critical. And she got fired by the AG in Letitia James the other day because she had been so outspoken about being opposed to pediatric gender medicine. And they told her not to, and they fired her for basically contradicting her boss. So she just went right over to the Trump administration and has joined the FTC and now will be investigated on behalf of their fraud department. It's one of those things cut off her head and just a new one grows and it's even more, I'll only become more powerful than you could ever imagine, like that Obi-Wan quote,
So she will not be invited to Pride this year, I take it.
Yeah. So that's the basic gamut, I think, of the Trump administration. So, so much of we've seen that you guys have covered is this idea, I think, of the woke left as being very coercive, aggressive, but coercive, scaring people into submission, essentially. And whereas what we see from the right and the woke right, if you want to call them that, the Trump administration is very authoritarian. So I think it asks the question, why do, say, heterodox podcasts like this still exist? And why is there still cause, or why should we be criticizing the left, say, from the left? And for me, the answer to that is, well, you want us to just lower the standards for everybody else because those guys were worse. What happens when the pendulum swings that way? Everyone has already been given this permission to keep doing all this stuff that's coercive. So I find that to be a flimsy argument. Yeah,
I think Jesse and I agree on this. We've both made it clear that as bad as the woke left was, and their sort of HR, it is in their HR reign of terror. There's something fundamentally different about implementing these same tactics in the federal government in the way that the Trump administration has done it. But let's get to this trial. So why don't you just get into it? So you wrote this piece for the Free Press about an 18-year-old detransitioner who goes by the name Fox Varian. Well, she's had many names. Currently it's Fox. She sued the surgeon who performed her top surgery / double mastectomy. His name is Simon Chin. She also sued her psychologist. His name was Kenneth Einhorn. So let's just start at the beginning. Who is Fox Varian? Wait, Fox Varian, Varian Fox.
Fox Varian.
Okay, got it.
So we've heard this so many times that the predominant sort of phenotype of people who present at pediatric gender clinics, or some version thereof, is a natal girl who has autism, many other psych problems, and has a real hard time of it after starting puberty, and then starts questioning their gender. Whereas historically, it was a very small population, largely natal males, gender dysphoric from a very young age, etc. So she belongs, part and parcel with that group. She had a very troubled childhood, a lot of difficulty emotionally and in school and that sort of thing, difficult separation. Her parents separated when she was 7, and then a 3-year custody battle. She became estranged from her father. So she started seeing Dr. Einhorn, the psychologist in the Westchester area where they all live, and she's about 14. And then at 15 and a half, the first time she ever mentions it, she says, I think I might want to change my name to Gabriel, which she saw as androgynous. And then, right after that, I want a binder, and I'm going to cut my hair and maybe change my clothes a little. And then boom, January 2019, she's 15 and a half. She starts socially transitioning in public, tells people at school that she was male, transgender. Only 2 months later, she starts saying, I want top surgery. And it was a real key point in the trial that instead of reflecting on this with her, that he never questioned it. Dr. Einhorn was just gung-ho from the beginning. And
he, sorry to interrupt you, but he had been her psychiatrist previous.
Psychologist, for about a year and a half. So long history.
Right. And so this, if your dysphoric onset is at 15, this is after the onset of puberty. Definitely not the classic case.
Absolutely not.
Or it's
she had a real hard time.
It's the classic ROGD case, not the classic toddler who comes out saying God made me a boy or whatever.
That term never came up in the trial. There were a lot of things that didn't come up in the trial. There were no politics in the trial whatsoever. So it was really stripped bare of a lot of things, the larger noise that people talk about and are talking about now. But the psychologist was really criticized for ultimately giving tacit approval or even enabling her ideas. And the note that he wrote that March, 2019, 2 months after she first socially transitioned and I want top surgery, was about action, looking into how to get top surgery. And it just went from there. So he wrote this referral letter in October of that year to the plastic surgeon, Dr. Chin, and then she had her breast removed 2 months later. And it was really amazing. Dr. Chin was on the stand, and he was a very imperious and elegant man, and gone to all the best schools, very unflappable. And he was very proud of himself. He said, I met with her not once, but twice.
Ooh.
I gave her 2 and 3 outs counting the day of the surgery. And no one took a step back at that moment and said, let's look at this big picture. She's only been thinking about this stuff for about a year. And you're giving yourself props for over a 9-week period of asking her twice. Like, what if you asked her like 18 times over 5 years and then you remove your breast? I talked to this expert in breastfeeding in Australia, and she was saying, this girl could have 30 years of fertility left in her, and you're making this decision in such a short period of time. And what really struck me was that one of the only sort of standards of care that either of the defendants would allow was a concrete benchmark, is they thought that a patient